stand by for action.
Thanks for joining me. My name is Dave Miller. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy. I want to thank Paul Alexander, friend of the program and patriot from across the pond, who has given me assistance with artwork, material, and advice for quite some time. Please check out Paul's blog, Defender of Faith, Guardian of Truth, at cpnagasaki.wordpress.com. I'd also like to thank Kenneth McClinton, host of the Exceptional Conservative Show, for providing inspiration for what you're about to hear. This is a story about decorum, the proper way to act in the proper situation. On Tuesday, July the 12th, 2016, a memorial service was held in Dallas, Texas, to remember and celebrate the lives of the 5 police officers killed in that Dallas terror attack. In attendance and speaking at this memorial were 2 presidents, one current and one former. Given the fact that we are currently in an election season for a new president of the United States, and given that decorum has been an issue for some in this election cycle, it is important that we compare how the current and former president of the United States chose to publicly mark the passing of the 5 law enforcement heroes in Dallas. We begin with President Barack Hussein Obama and excerpts of his comments.
I've seen how inadequate words can be in bringing about lasting change. I've seen how inadequate my own words have been.
One is forced to say that from a certain standpoint, President Obama's words have been very adequate. They have encouraged and emboldened Black Lives Matter, which this president said that he stood in solidarity with before the Dallas terror attack.
And so I'm reminded of a passage in John's Gospel. Let us love not with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. If we are to honor these 5 outstanding officers who we lost, then we will need to act on the truths that we know.
A very good piece of manipulation, people. With those words, President Obama is saying to you that if you disagree with any of what he believes are his truths, then you do not honor the dead of the Dallas terror attack. This is the same leftist strategy that has been employed for the past several years, implying that those who do not agree with the goals of the global socialist hegemony are un-American. The fact that this president chooses to now bring out this tired, old, left-wing canard during a funeral for 5 slain police officers is proof that this man's ideology is more important to him than anything.
We also know that centuries of racial discrimination, of slavery and subjugation, and Jim Crow.
Slavery in 19th century America, which was initiated by members of the Democratic Party. Jim Crow, which came out of Reconstruction after the American Civil War, championed by members of the American Democratic Party. And what are progressives and the Black Lives Matter quote-unquote movement doing about slavery of black Africans today, as people are listening to this program? Not a whole lot, but this president is certainly willing to bring it up and throw it in everyone's face at the most inappropriate times, including a memorial service for 5 police officers who gave their lives in the line of duty, defending some of the very people that wanted them dead.
They didn't simply vanish with the end of lawful segregation. They didn't just stop when Dr. King made a speech or the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act were signed. Race relations have improved dramatically in my lifetime. Those who deny it are dishonoring the struggles that helped us achieve that progress.
I'll do a little translation for President Obama here. Since I've been president, race relations have gone in the toilet. I've seen to it. But you better not say anything about that, or you're a racist. That's essentially what this man just said at this memorial service.
But we know, but America, we know that bias remains. We know it.
People, I want you to listen to the conviction in that voice. This, again, is proof that Barack Hussein Obama is driven by his own internal demons of racism. How often has this man been called basically a dead fish? Someone who really doesn't seem to feel much, and that does kind of come out in his voice. But play that last statement back. He is passionate about the fact that he thinks that the United States of America is a racist cesspit, and that it is his job, his appointed task, to initiate payback.
If we're honest, perhaps we've heard prejudice in our own heads and felt it in our own hearts. We know that. And while some suffer far more under racism's burden, some feel to a far greater extent discrimination's sting. None of us is entirely innocent. No institution is entirely immune. And that includes our police departments. We know this.
And once again, this president's stunning lack of decorum comes out. At a ceremony where he should be honoring law enforcement officers, he is raking over the dying embers of racism at exactly the time that he should be trying to heal the country and show support for the men and women who wear the badge.
And so when African Americans from all walks of life, from different communities across the country, voice a growing despair over what they perceive to be unequal treatment, when mothers and fathers raise their kids right and have the talk about how to respond if stopped by a police officer, yes sir, no sir, but still fear that something terrible may happen when their child walks out the door, still fear that kids being stupid and not quite doing things right might end in tragedy.
Now, with increasing frequency, I've been hearing this mess about the talk. This is put out as a conversation that only black parents have with their children. It's just a black thing. It doesn't apply to anybody else. And it's justified by usually false narratives like the ones that you just heard this president put out during what should have been a solemn occasion for honored dead. Well, for those who don't know, I'll point out what's been obvious for generations. Almost all parents and children have the talk. Better believe my parents and grandparents had it with me, and my siblings. We were told on no uncertain terms not to be disrespectful of the police. Basically, we were told the same thing that many young black people are told. Why? Because police officers are the authority on the street when it comes to law enforcement. You do not treat them with disrespect, because if you do, bad things can happen to you. That's not just black people, as President Obama implied in this part of his speech. It's everybody. But the president wasn't done. He continues.
When all this takes place, more than 50 years after the passage of the Civil Rights Act, we cannot simply turn away and dismiss those in peaceful protest as troublemakers or paranoid. We can't simply dismiss it as a symptom of political correctness or reverse racism. To have your experience denied like that, it hurts. Surely we can see that, all of us.
And if Black Lives Matter conducted themselves as Dr. King's marchers did in the 1960s, they would probably have far more people joining them than even they could believe. I'm going to play you something that you probably haven't heard, because it got practically no national attention. This story is headlined, "Convenience Store Looted Downtown After Attack." It was filed at 1:51 a.m. Central Daylight Time on Friday, July the 8th, 2016, by Landon Hoff of WFAA-TV, Channel 8, Dallas.
We told you earlier that there was some kind of situation going on near a 7-Eleven downtown Dallas area, in fact, on Ross Street. Our Jobin Paniker's there right now where a number of police officers had gathered, also a crowd, and they looked like there was some kind of a standoff going on. Jobin?
Well, John, I guess this is the result when you push people further and further away as the officers create their perimeter, as they push people away. A lot of people have congregated here just outside this 7-Eleven. We're on San Jacinto and Griffin, and this 7-Eleven they shut down about an hour ago because there were just so many people here. We had a chance to talk with someone who came in to actually buy some water, and they said people were just coming in and just taking alcohol out of the fridges in the area, and also just taking anything they can. You can see a lot of the trash on the ground. This is all stuff. I can't tell you that all this is stuff that's been looted, but for what we've been told is at least some of the items that you've seen here are things that people have stolen from here. You can see the wall of officers that are sort of protecting at least the establishment, as well as, well, the reason we got to this location so late was because our vehicles were parked in this parking lot, and we had a very hard time getting our vehicles out because there were so many people surrounding it, and also people putting their beer bottles and pouring their beer and alcohol all over our vehicles. So we had to remove our vehicles safely with all these people around. I would say there are about 300 to 400 people in this area. We're being told that there are buses on the way here to pick up some of these people. We do not know for what purpose. We do not know if they've come here, if DPD has called the buses out here to pick up these people. But at this point, what we're noticing is a lot of people here taunting officers. We're noticing people that are clearly intoxicated, people who are clearly mad, and not a very good mix right now just outside this 7-Eleven. Again, it is closed. It's closed early. The owner asked DPD to shut down because people were coming in to steal items from that store.
All during the night of the Dallas terror attack, national news outlets told us about every 30 seconds or so that what went on in Dallas was a peaceful protest. The story you just heard shows the lie between the new sanitized veneer of the Black Lives Matter terrorist organization and its true, ugly, hateful face. The face not of peaceful protest, but of anarchy. There is a legitimate way to protest. People in polite society can and should protest what they see as injustice. Dr. King accomplished it in the 1960s. And today, organizations like the English Defense League do the same thing in the United Kingdom. And so does the Tea Party movement here in the United States of America. So while President Obama talks about how much it hurts for people to have their concerns dismissed and exhorts people to feel sorry for those who created the atmosphere that spawned the very attack that killed those 5 police officers, I have to ask the question, I wonder how much it hurt Christopher Marquez, a veteran of Iraq and recipient of the Bronze Star for Valor, who was just trying to eat his dinner at McDonald's and was surrounded by people asking him if he believed that Black Lives Matter. And after Mr. Marquez peacefully ignored them and walked out of the restaurant with calls to his back that he was a racist, those same people beat and robbed him. That was in February of this year. My guess is that hurt. And by the way, there is a Snopes.com article impugning Mr. Marquez's character and saying that his statements are inconclusive. I wonder if that hurts. Well, frankly, in this case, I'm not buying the Snopes. And I'm not buying that I have to feel sorry for people who loot convenience stores, break into and loot other shops, set fires, commit assault, stop traffic, and chant that they want police officers dead. If you have a beef, that's no way to get people on your side. And a funeral honoring 5 whose credo was to protect and to serve was no place to beg sympathy for Black Lives Matter terrorists.
As a society, we choose to underinvest in decent schools. We allow poverty to fester so that entire neighborhoods offer no prospect for gainful employment. We refuse to fund drug treatment and mental health programs.
Awesome. Let's turn a ceremony to honor the victims of a vicious terrorist attack into a Democratic National Committee campaign stump speech. You wouldn't think that this narcissistic carnival barker of a president could make any more inappropriate remarks on this solemn occasion. But he manages it.
We flood communities with so many guns that it is easier for a teenager to buy a Glock than get his hands on a computer or even a book.
Really, dude? I can think of few places more inappropriate to advocate for yet another leftist gun grab than at a memorial service of this kind, or indeed any kind. Not all of President Obama's remarks at this memorial service were inappropriate, but the ones that were staggeringly inappropriate. There's a time for every kind of a speech. Campaign stops, fundraising events, and memorial services. Some might dismiss this as a lesser skill, but it is important that the leader of the free world know when to use the appropriate words. Anyone remember after Hurricane Katrina, when President George W. Bush was raked over the coals because he did not immediately rush down to New Orleans with his entourage and security staff, get in the way of first responders, and be seen caring? Well, the fact is that for all the problems that President Bush had, he knew one thing. He knew decorum. For many, a basic in an aspiring president of the United States. He knew it after the 9/11 attacks, and he knew it in Dallas on July the 12th, 2016. President Obama and his presumptive successor, Hillary Clinton, could well learn a lesson from the man who did the job before. This is decorum as displayed by a true statesman at a solemn occasion like the Dallas Memorial.
Today the nation grieves, but those of us who love Dallas and call it home have had 5 deaths in the family. Laura and I see members of law enforcement every day. We count them as our friends. And we know, like for every other American, that their courage is our protection and shield. With their deaths, we have lost so much. We are grief-stricken, heartbroken, and forever grateful. Every officer has accepted a calling that sets them apart. Most of us imagine if the moment called for that we would risk our lives to protect a spouse or a child. Those wearing the uniform assume that risk for the safety of strangers. The shock of this evil still has not faded. At times, it seems like the forces pulling us apart are stronger than the forces binding us together. Argument turns too easily into animosity. Disagreement escalates too quickly into dehumanization. Too often we judge other groups by their worst examples, while judging ourselves by our best intentions. And this has strained our bonds of understanding and common purpose. But Americans, I think, have a great advantage. To renew our unity, we only need to remember our values. We have never been held together by blood or background. We are bound by things of the Spirit, by shared commitments to common ideals. We know that the kind of just, humane country we want to build, that we have seen in our best dreams, is made possible when men and women in uniform stand guard. At their best, when they're trained and trusted and accountable, they free us from fear.
People, our country is going through a very hard time. We have those who would use any means necessary to bring about cradle-to-grave control of the American people, up to and including violence. We have to do everything we can to make sure that they don't win. And even if they do obtain a victory, that it will be only temporary. Personal liberty is the gift of God to man. We can maintain a constitutionally federated republic where self-rule is the law, but we will only be able to do so if we call out false prophets, if we're honest with ourselves, and if, at every opportunity, we exercise proper decorum. That's it for this time. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for listening, and may your God go with you. Goodbye. The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2016 Anno Domini.